I get nervous about these still, where I've done these enough, but at the same time, it's like, okay, do I not like? Did I hit record? Did I hit go live? Did I do all of these steps?
Yeah, I know, man. I just recorded a video yesterday. It took me like 3 hours to set up, man. It feels like a movie production every time I make a YouTube video,
Yeah,
for real. For real. But because
yeah,
of that, and because I'm working alone, there's like 85 things that I could forget to do
yeah.
correctly, you know?
So you're in academia,
Mhm.
in that citadel. So what made you want to start doing YouTube content?
That's are we streaming already?
Yeah. Oh,
Okay,
sorry. I
cool.
should have prepped that. I'm so sorry. I usually like I have to remember I'm a sneaky bastard. So sometimes I just kind of sneak things in. Right when it does.
Yeah. Good thing I wasn't like poking my nose or something. Yeah.
My bad. My bad.
So yeah. This is oh, so by the way, everybody, hi, I'm
Oh
Dr.
yes.
Dr. Mike Mena. I work at Brooklyn College, here in Brooklyn. So why did I start doing YouTube? That's actually a very important question to me, like personally, in terms of like my research, my political positionality, my feelings towards the ivory tower. I started the YouTube because as a graduate student, I could not understand a goddamn thing that was happening in class. So as a struggling, drowning student, I went to YouTube for help. You gotta go to that YouTube high school, YouTube University, and I noticed that. So I would look up a video on, let's say, any particular theory, right? And the videos that would come up were either like 1 minute or 30-second long, like keyword style, like this is what this means, or it's like an hour and a half long, horrible quality video of a professor at Stanford in an auditorium where you can't even see the PowerPoint. You can't understand the questions being asked. The camera is like 1,000 miles away. So the professor's like this small. And it was shit, basically, is what I'm getting at. So, and plus it didn't help because they spoke in the exact same language that I didn't understand anyways, right? So it was just like, I go to class, don't understand shit, go to YouTube, still don't understand shit. So I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna make a video. So and that's literally how it started. And I said, I'm gonna make a video and I'm not gonna use not one fucking big word. And let's see what happens. Let's see if I can do it. Right.
Yeah.
I know something about language, a little something. So let me see if I can translate everything into grocery store mom language, is what I usually call it. Right. So if my mom wouldn't understand this, so this concept talking to me in line at a grocery store, then I did something wrong. I need to rephrase, I need to reframe it, something, take out the bigger words, whatever. Not that my mom doesn't understand big words. She's like, but she's a registered nurse. She's not a critical race theorist, right? She's not a linguistic anthropologist, right? So I just decided, hey man, I'm gonna try to make videos that are accessible to literally everybody, and also all the videos that are up there right now are all old white men, and that's it. Those are the people. I had a choice between an old white man teaching me on YouTube or an older white man teaching me on YouTube, right? So I was just like, you know what? I don't want my videos to look like that. I don't want my videos to sound like that. And I think it's important too that we have people of color being able to engage with the public too, and people of color in academia too. We need to take back those institutions that were not built for us. They're not designed for us. They don't like us a lot of times. So, I'm really into the idea of getting those bodies in those places to do work on behalf of us, for us. So that's my whole YouTube academia spiel right there.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because a lot of the content, we're in the same on the same sort of like semi origin, where my sort of quest was, for me personally, is that I came from music, so I have a musical background. I went to school for music, all that stuff.
Yeah, me too, man. I got a bachelor's degree in classical guitar. That's my bachelor right there.
I'm telling you, that's a pipeline. That is a straight up like music to social sciences.
Yeah, right?
Pipeline is real. Because basically what ended up happening was I started, much like I think most people when they get older, is that I just started like questioning everything around me, where like you get a couple of weird interactions and you start just thinking like, this isn't normal, right? Where it's like kind of like the way I describe it is that like I have like two people on my shoulder. There's a few. There's like Joseph, there's Joe, and then there's Joelle. And then there's just Joelle in the back of the room going, this isn't normal. Like, and then like basically what I learned very short and fast is that like there's just a lot of information that education can't or won't cover for a lot of different reasons and motivations. And I just got sort of like obsessed with like reading and just reading. That's the most important part of it, like clarification, just reading. And then I came out of that like 26, 27, where I had like a whole sea of texts that I've read and went through. And then I went back and it's like, I don't remember shit. Like I remember certain like pieces. But then when it comes to actually like taking that thing and being able to sort of like in your ways, like explain it to just the lay, I was just bad at it. And then basically like how I sort of segue to the stuff I'm doing now is just trying to not only understand the world better, but also like as I'm revisiting these texts and these things, like much like my MO on my YouTube, it's just like practice talking on the internet, where it's just like figuring this out and rolling with it. Because I think for a lot of people, they go into their particular field of study or their particular education, and then it kind of stops whenever you get that piece of paper and shake the dean or superintendent's hand. When in reality, it's like, yeah, it turns out people are still making books about the things that you learned about in school. And then like if you're not careful, I think you can run into the situation of like, you'll have a question and think it's unanswered, and then you'll be like, oh, like 50 plus people wrote about this dating all the way back to 1900. What? And
I always kind of like giggle to myself, because I used to do this a lot. I used to say, no one's ever written about something or other, right? And then there ends up being like tons written, right? And then not only that, let's say it's a cool theory about race or inequality or something, right? So you find these people that wrote it and you're like, finally, this is my jam. Finally, somebody's writing about this. And then you figure out that there was probably a black scholar, a black feminist that wrote about it like 30, 40, 50 years before that white dude, right? So, I mean, it's like the white theorists, or more mainstream theory, is always trying to catch up to where all of these people of color theories have always been for a long time. They've been there already, you know, and now people are like finally discovering how racist academia was, or is rather. And it's just it's funny that I just it's silly, maybe not funny, it's silly.
Yeah, it's peculiar because well, just to take a small step back, because this is probably gonna be disseminated in different places. My name is Joe. I practice talking on the internet, and this is to my technical internet left is Mike Mena, who is Dr. Mike Mena. How dare I? How dare I?
I feel like I have to say it because nobody believes me. Actually, when I say it, nobody believes me anyways. Maybe I should just stop saying it.
Yeah. And he is a linguistic anthropologist and professor, like you mentioned, at Brooklyn College. It's a CUNY school, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And I guess for a little bit of context, for those of you who might see this in a different sort of capacity, I cover Mike's content a lot when there's sort of different muzzings and muddy within my stream community, because he does a really good job at talking. And not only a good job at talking, but dissecting things that are made by really, really smart people. And sometimes when you're really smart, your brain is a little too, the pathways are a little too precise. So you get to, and my brain's big. My brain is kind of like Route One to the Gotham, to like to the Gotham's Bridge, excuse me, where it's like it moves. It does move, but it doesn't move in the best way. So I use like to kind of give you flowers. Like I use your content a lot for when needed and when necessary. And sometimes like we
Awesome.
revisit the same thing over and over and over.
Mhm.
So with that being said, for some folks who might not really know, hence big words, what exactly entails linguistic anthropology, and how does that differ or is similar to just anthropology generally and the study of like language and stuff?
Yeah, so there's this common misperception that linguistic anthropology is linguistics, and linguistics is very far not what linguistic anthropology does. Linguistics is like very sciencey, like let's measure sound waves, let's talk about syntax and morphology and all of these other like big words that I super don't care about because it's super boring to me. So I don't do linguistics, right? But linguistic anthropology is essentially anthropology, the same as study of culture, whatever the word culture means, but with a special emphasis on the language use. So it's not about like how many languages do you know. It's more of like, how does language function in society? What when you say this happens only because it is preceded by all of this history, right? So a lot of times the work is trying to put together the past, present, and possibilities for the future. And that's where we get into like predicting what's going to happen, right? But I thought that was super useful when I started hearing, well, what one scholar called mock Spanish, which is like words like problemo or cerveza, or Donald Trump loves to say loco and things like that, right? Bad hombres. And that always kind of like rubbed me the wrong way. And I was just like, is that racist? I don't know. Is it? It feels fucked up, but is it racist? I don't know. And that's really what sparked my interest, is like learning how language works and how language can replicate white supremacist ideologies without even saying anything explicitly about race or about white supremacy just in general. All it has to do is exist as this mocking version of Spanish. Like, for example, Donald Trump, when he says bad hombres, he's mocking Spanish, right? But I think the more important part is he's deploying a racial stereotype about Mexicans being dangerous and drug lords and whatever, rapists, criminals, all of that stuff that he came down the escalator to say, right? So I just thought it was so fascinating how we can smuggle in stereotypes and racial thinking, racial ideologies into very, very basic everyday language. So the first book I read was called The Everyday Language of White Racism. And that was like, whoo, this is what I want to do right here. This shit. I want to talk about language and race and, culture and stuff, because that goes part of it, right? But language and race, that's my jam right there.
Yeah.
And that's how I got into it. That's basically what linguistic anthropology does. It's anthropology with a little bit extra emphasis on the language and the meaning part.
Yeah, it's funny. As I say, it's funny. It's really on the point of like of a lot of things where these things, and I tell like something that I'm trying to be a bit more reformed on, because my community reminds me of this, of like systems, not people. And if it's systems and institutions and not people, a lot of things can just manifest itself without even knowing. For example, if I'm going to atone for my sins, since it's Easter season and our boy came out and he's rolling, like I used to just jokingly with friends of just like, instead of like if I don't know the language, and this is of like the person that is speaking, I would replace it with foods. but I would replace it with foods with those kind of caricatures of what I believe the accent was. And this wasn't exclusive to just like to Mexicans, Brazilians, Colombians. It would just be whatever group that we're running into. And we would do it for all groups. And then it just hit a point where it's like, yeah, this is fucked up. Like there's no like it's
Yeah.
it's
and extra fucked up is there's no such thing as white food. So it doesn't even require an accent or a funny anything, right? Because whiteness is just invisible.
yeah.
You know?
And what's wild about that is that wasn't something that, because sometimes I get some cool people in my chat saying cool things, and there's always this sort of attachment to like responsibility of the individual, but insofar as like this is, I don't know how to really like articulate this properly, but this idea that like this was explicitly learned at a particular time in a particular setting, where sometimes that's just kind of what's around you. And you just kind of pick that up, and then by the time, if you're not careful, you just end up being a Herschel Walker, just saying anti-black things and
Oh boy, oh boy.
and then like, and I look at that, and I look at people like that, whether it be Donald Trump, like I mean, name dropped in Herschel Walker, or any sort of non-white individual. It kind of like it hurts my heart a little bit, where it's like, man, like nobody was there to contextualize this reality, and it hits a point sometimes where it's almost too late. I'm not too late in a way like they're not like reformable or anything like that, but like when it's just kind of baked into who you are as a person, sometimes it's really hard to decouple.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of work to kind of like go back into like your brain and your thoughts and kind of dissect a certain thing that you say and be like, okay, where did I get this from? And if you have to ask that question, right, where did you get this from? Then we're talking about history. And because this is the United States, a lot of times where we got that from is some kind of ideology, white supremacist ideology at some point. That maybe it's evolved and it looks a little less white supremacy, but it's still there.
Yeah. Well, something that I like, I keep trying to articulate when I'm having like actual like debates and arguments with people, where there's this, and you talked about this a little bit in one of your videos, like there's this idea that racism, well, not really directly to this idea, but there's this like pervasive idea that racism is over because nobody's in hoods anymore in public.
Oh, buddy.
Where it's like, of course there's no more, like why do you think there isn't the Klan anymore? And it's like, well, there's a lot of reasons if we really want to like approach that honestly, but there just hit a point in the evolution of language where you can't just overtly say the N-word on the Congress floor anymore, which is like, if you want to call that progress, I guess, but
that's a baby step right there. Baby.
Yeah, because then people think like that is like a huge stride in human history, and it's like, and then like every single non-white person in America is just like, have you been to Texas?
Or you'll have the white person be like, well, you know, maybe they shouldn't use it either. If we can't use it, and it's just like, y'all, it's not the same word. Oh my god. Oh my. I've gotten into this like I don't know. I don't know if it's a conversation or an argument, right? But a lot of times I'll just be like, you know, there's a couple forms of the N-word. Can you spell it for me? Spell them for me. When you force people to spell them, then they'll realize, oh, there is at least two versions of this. It's like, right. Both of them you can't say. That's fact. And other people can say if they want. All right, so that's the end of the argument right there.
Yeah.
Let it go. It's not your word. Give it up.
And even
right?
it's funny because you bring that up, because within this space, and the space I navigate in is like an ambiguous, amorphous thing called Twitch politics, which is basically a decentralized. Well, some might argue it's centralized around two individuals who shall not be named right now, but essentially decentralized group of content creators who, broadly speaking, talk about political content in a bunch of different ways. No different, like the equivalent to that of YouTube would be like
BreadTube.
and then
BreadTube,
and then there's like the new coining with the black creators, and they're called Cornbread Tube, which is hilarious.
I never heard of that one.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, I think a content creator, Little Bill, said it.
Love it.
And then it's just kind of stuck. And it's like, you know what? Like, that properly.
And that's perfect.
Describe and the thing is, which is really funny for me, not really funny, just like really cool, is that, and you talked about this in one video where it's like, just by changing a word, it points to something else. And that's like really powerful when it comes to, like, for me at least, like taking control back to within conversations and stuff like that, because like BreadTube points to, like, I don't know if you know any of these names, like the ContraPoints, the other individuals whose names I just forgotten real time, where just something as simple as Cornbread Tube is it's really powerful and something else. So it says I have a time remaining. What is this?
40. Oh, because we don't have a institutional account probably, and I think they started limiting it to like 40 minutes or something like that.
Oh wow! So I guess what I'll have to do. Let me see what it needs me to do. Okay. Oh Lord, have mercy. Let me see what I
come back in after the 10 minutes.
Maybe it's at the 10. I'll just like close back up and then send the invite again. It might just be the same room, but we'll make it work. Maybe even segments. But
like a TV show. You have a commercial you can play in the back.
I don't know about that.
We'll be right back.
Yeah, but real quick, something about that which is interesting. I guess I want to hear. I guess I'm curious of your thoughts on is that idea of sort of. Because let me clarify. The reason why I brought up political Twitch is that one of the conversations that cycles around a lot of the time is literally the N-word. Well, it's called the N-word debate, where first off, it's really, really white centric. So that's a whole other sidebar conversation. But in your research and navigation, how has, at least from what you've seen or observed, how has communities dealt with the idea of words and phrases that are within a particular community, and then sort of like controlling, I won't say controlling the use of that word, but how that word is like consumed outward? So basically, to simplify it, like for people, because sometimes I say things and no one understands what I'm saying, is that you have a word that's a particular in-group that is contextual based on where you find it, and then just because the in-group uses that word and has that word, the other like members of out-groups will take that word and then sort of do whatever they want with it.
Right. So that's a tricky question, because yes, you can reclaim, like let's say reclaim a slur or whatever, right? Within that group, it's reclaimed, but then you're talking about like after that point outwards where other people are like, oh, it's not a bad word anymore, that means everybody can say it, kind of thing, or they'll walk up to that line and be like, well, I mean, they use it too, so what I tend to prioritize is, has that word or term or phrase been reclaimed within a group in such a way that the group itself appreciates it and is okay with using as a valid, legitimized form of representation, whatever that may be, right? To me, that would be the priority there. If it is okay within the group, that is the priority. Now, when we go outside of the group, this is where I have to ask myself, how important is it for me to get into the debate outside of the group? And to me, my energy would be within the group, reclaiming. That's where I want to live and put myself through. Do something for us, by us, as opposed to for us, for other people so they can feel okay about themselves. That I don't give a fuck about, right? But within the group, yeah, sure. I totally support the idea of reclaiming words. Or if you want to be even more radical, you could reclaim the word and then introduce a new word and change it again and then change it and constantly be rotating. You see this a lot. And I'll just talk about this very like with 1 or 2 sentences. You see this a lot in queer communities where a word will come up, they reclaim it, they put it away, another word comes up, they reclaim it, put it away, and they do it over and over again, right? So before it used to be, you know, gay community, then it was like lesbian and gay community, then it was LGBT, and then it was LGBTQ, and then it was LGBTQ two spirits and LGBTQ ABCDEFG, right?
Yeah.
All the way. And I actually think that technique, where you kind of barrage the public with terms to where no term is stabilized in any certain way, to me that seems really effective. And that's really only something you kind of see. Well, I don't want to say it like that because it sounds super absolute, but I think that technique, the changing, reclaiming, changing, reclaiming, it seems to me like that could possibly be a really good political strategy moving forward when it comes to like reclaiming words that, you know, were thrown at us at one point, but now we reclaim it, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Because what's funny to me is that like the way that I sort of explain it to people when it comes to the Voldemort word that begins with N and rhymes with trigger, is that like when we, like you mentioned, if we engage in that very, very honestly, like we know the difference, and most people know the difference and the reasons why, but then like for some reason, and the way I describe it, because we're gonna have to have a conversation about the members of the palm color community shortly, but but something that I explain to my chat sometimes is that something that's very pervasive about sort of like a culture of white supremacy and just like whiteness as it manifests itself is that those who identify or end up being part of that white identifiable group, there's like a settled habit of thought and action that everything is yours no matter what, and if it's not, it's oppression. and that's a slippery demon, because then you'll have like the way that like how that manifests itself when it comes to the N-word is that like even when the argumentation and discussion of like, you know, this is a like you can roll the dice, you roll it, see what happens. This is not true in all contexts. Like you might be able to, if you are a person who identifies as white, to be able to use that word in the context of your acceptable contextual in-group, but as you expand it out, you're not going to be able to cash that check in every bank.
Right.
And then there's variance, and then like you explain that to people, and it's like, so I can still use it, right? And it's like, oh my God.
Oh my God. And that's when I have a stroke right there. That is. But yeah, I think you're picking up on a good point. I'm actually doing a video that's probably coming out this week called Whiteness as Property. And the idea is exactly what you mentioned, is that one of the assumptions within whiteness is the right to dictate how the world looks, as if the world was part of white property. And super awesome article. I recommend anybody that's out there. It's by a legal theorist named Cheryl Harris, and it's called Whiteness as Property. Super complicated, but I will have a YouTube on it coming this week. And it's the expectation to be able to just come in and redefine something or own something or say, oh, that can be mine too. That is just a settled expectation of whiteness. Is the assumption, the entitlement that because they are of this group that has been historically positioned as superior or smarter or more legitimate, that means that they have the most legitimate claim to defining the way the world works. And part of the way the world works is definitions of words. And so if you just feel that you're entitled to that power to define, then you're going to have a lot of problems and trouble letting go of something like the N-word, because you feel like, oh man, there must be some way that I can make the N-word mine. And I'm just like, dude, let it go. It's not yours. Not everything's for you, bro. Just let it go. Sorry, it's not for you. You know?
and then like to reinforce that, then like it's not only just language, it just like pervasive, like it just grows in every area of activity. And then you have well-intentioned people who like sort of fall into that trap,
Mm-hmm.
that trap of I know I shouldn't have this, or this doesn't belong to me, or this space is not inherently designed for me, but
Mm-hmm.
if I
Oh, I think
don't,
we're about to get disconnected.
yeah. But if I don't feel like it belongs to me, then it's oppression, and I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
appeal to the institutions to make it mine. With that being said, I guess
Oh,
what
I got a good example,
yeah,
man. When we
yeah.
come back,
So
when we come back.
yeah, let me just, I guess we'll pop back out and pop back in, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let me do that, and I'll be right back.